Well, hello, everyone. I'm super excited for today, all about the disc profiles and more stuff I don't really know a ton about, but definitely let us know where you're tuning in from. I would love to know. And let's see, I'm just going over to my other monitor real quick, just kind of refreshing, making sure it is wherever it's supposed to be. And let's see here. All right. Okay, just got all those notifications, so that's great. So we have people starting to watch. Feel free, comment, let me know where you're tuning in from. And I am going to let my other holiday. Hello there, Sylvia. Awesome. Playing ping pong and listening in. Awesome. Thank you for joining. I'll have to find out who that is. All right. So that's great. I would love for you guys to introduce yourself. Not sure who wants to go first. Who's going on? Mark, and you're muted. You should unmute yourself, introduce yourself.
I am Mark LaPlume. I'm with Disc Plus Profiles. I live down south in South Louisiana. I've been with Disc Plus Profiles for just about 2 years now. And I've been working with Jay for at least 6 years now, I believe.
Yeah.
And we're happy to be here.
We're super happy you guys are here. I know Bree is at a speaker convention that she was super excited for. Otherwise, she would certainly be here as well.
Yeah, I'll go next. So I'm Baker Niblick. I'm one of the co-founders of Disc Plus Profiles. We've been around 3 years, but I've been working with Jay. So you guys can tell me the same last name. So been with him for about 27 years, but we've been working together after I graduated for the last 6 years. I'm in Knoxville, Tennessee, and we're excited. Today we're going to kind of answer some questions you guys have, and we're going to dive a little deeper into the disc and the science behind it. Jay, who is about to introduce himself, is the author of the profiles we'll be going over today. So yeah, that's my introduction. Jay, if you want to go next.
Thank you very much. I appreciate having you here, and I appreciate being here. So my name's Jay. I've known Baker, like you said, for 27 years. I've known Mark for 35 years, right, Mark? I think we served and trained together a long time ago, and been friends ever since. So all of us here have this passion for personality assessments and how they help people. So that's kind of what we're here to talk about, and one specific assessment or a set of assessments that we at the company license and make available. And we're going to go over what the value of them is for those that are really familiar with them. We'll probably start a little slow for you, just some background and basics, but we won't lose anybody, and we'll keep it fun and kind of just, ad hoc. Let's go. I got a list of questions and I'm good.
Yeah, go ahead and explain, what is the disc? Why would you use it? Why is it important? And I know you have a bunch of questions that Bree has, but we'll also bring in any comments. If anybody has any questions, please make sure, put your comments in. We'll go ahead and answer those questions as well. But go ahead and get started. What the heck is DISC? Why is it important?
It's a good question. I appreciate it, Heather. DISC is a model. It's just an acronym for a model that was created by a psychologist and his wife, Dr. William Molston Marston. That's his middle name and last name. I'm not having a stroke. And he was at Harvard. It's an old model. Again, I talked about personality and behavioral assessments. We focus in on DISC because it's one of the more established behavioral assessments or personality measures or instruments out there. He wrote the model. It's a fascinating story if you want to go back and look at them. Wicked smart, both of them. They invented the lie detector. And the two of them, him and his wife, invented the Wonder Woman character. So big fans of their work. In 1928, he published a book called The Emotions of Normal People. And it sounds crazy to think today, but back then, they weren't studying normal people. They were only looking at psychoses and schizophrenia and psychological disorders. And so he was very pioneering in his attitude, him and his wife, on, but what are we going to learn about the emotions and behaviors and personalities of people that aren't dysfunctional, the normal majority of the people? They got ridiculed for it, actually. They had trouble getting funding for it. So DISC is D-I-S-C. It's decisive, interactive, stabilizing, and conscientiousness. It's just 2 factors put against each other at 90 degrees. It makes 4 quadrants. We use it because it's been studied. It's our own assessment, the one that I wrote, the DISC version I wrote on his theory. He didn't ever actually write an instrument and an output or report. He just established a theory of behavioral assessment. We're at 28, 29 million people that have taken the assessment so far around the world. Maybe 52, 53 countries we have operations in where they're licensing the assessment through business plans and partners and things like that. So we chose that of one of many personality assessments because we know the validity is there. We know that the proof is there, that it's observable, it's universal, and it makes a big difference. Why? Understanding what your natural drivers are, right? The things that are happening subconsciously under the surface, that's pivotal to your success and the success of the people you manage, right? 98% of our decisions on a daily basis are probably more driven by subconscious than conscious thought, right? We've got 100 billion neurons up there with thousands of connections each for like 64 quadrillion connections. The brain is the most complex thing identified in the universe today. Not my opinion. I'm mimicking what experts around the world say as well, right? Not being aware of how that impacts your daily business is one of the big critical mistakes that we see businesses make. We assume, it's an age-old adage that your parents all told you, you can do anything you put your mind to. That's fantastic. But based on the first 20 years or so, when we're born, we've got more neural network connections, and it's the only part of our brain that actually reduces. Our eyes get a little bigger, our bones get bigger, our muscles get bigger. But the brain is the only organ that's actually wired more with connectivity than as we grow, that actually shrinks. Not the size of the brain, the connections inside the brain. And that's because of patterning based on genetics and where we're raised and how we're raised. We start to make different connections. By the time we're about 20, these connections are fairly set. And that's why this is all important. We're talking about things that affect the performance of a human that are not likely to structurally change anytime soon. Do they change slowly over time? Absolutely. 5, 10 years, you can see subtle changes, but the core style tends to be fairly fixed, right? So that's why this is important. That's why it's vital for you to understand and be aware of what are the things that are really driving. And this is just one aspect or facet of that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I know a lot of employees, I know I've had to do that whole DISC assessment just for a job. I didn't get the job. Apparently I don't know. They said I was too stuck in my ways or, too intimidating or whatever it was. I mean, it was like a low man job, but I was like, I don't want your job. I'm going to be your boss's boss. What are you talking about? But whatever. Okay. But I wasn't soft enough, or I don't know, for whatever the position was. They didn't tell me what my DISC profile, but I do know I had to fill out all these questions, and I knew that's basically what it was going over your personality. I know a lot of teams and brokers, when they're, bringing on team members, they have them do that because they want to make sure they're going to be complimenting the team, because you don't want to, and I'm sure a lot of that has to make sure that the personalities are the same and the output, their coaches are basically saying, yes, this person's a right fit for your team and stuff like that.
And it's a part of it, right? No set of assessments. First, it should ideally be a battery of assessments. Any one single psychometric instrument, as they're officially called, doesn't have any real predictive ability, right? But if you start putting 2 or 3 or 4 together, then it becomes a lot more accurate. And again, there's great, valid, and reliable assessments out there. It's kind of the elephant in the room. In many cases, there's a lot of bad stuff out there, right? Plenty of good assessments, but any assessment you're using, ours or anyone else's, always be confident that you can ask for what's called the technical manual or a validity and reliability study. You don't even have to open it up and read one page of it, right? It's usually filled with a bunch of technobabble and all kinds of statistics. So unless you're really having trouble going to sleep on a weekend, probably not something most people want to read. But if the company's not willing to give it to you If they can't deliver it, if they say, oh, it's proprietary, all of that is a big red flag. Run the other way. They should, any good, valid company, it's like if you're thinking about buying a used car and they will not show you the Carfax, right? You don't even need to know what it says in the Carfax, but if they give it to you, you can be pretty confident that it's going to be a reliable assessment. And then even then, when we do have valid and reliable assessments, they should only be more than maybe 25 to 33% of a decision when it comes to a human. So let's use hiring for an example. Maybe a third. One of the critical mistakes we often see people make is they assume the assessment says everything. Think in a medical analogy, right? It's a set of like comprehensive metabolics. You want to understand blood pressure. You want to understand cholesterol. Looking at those two things would not dictate behavior. You're not going to go, oh, I'm going to diagnose you based on these two factors. There's a whole bunch of things that go into it. So as you use these, they can be very informative, right, at measuring these intangible things that are hard for you to see, especially in interviews, right? Because I'm on my best behavior in an interview, or I should be. There's an old phrase I had in a presentation a long, long time ago that says, are you tired of hiring John Wayne on Friday and Woody Allen shows up on Monday? No offense to either, but that when you're in the interview, you're intentionally trying to think about everything you say. A good structured interviews can break that down and kind of get people into a more casual mode. But even then, it's not enough time and exposure. So understanding what these drivers are, understanding how to incorporate them into your own performance or those of others. If you're a leader, I would take probably 6 months to get to know somebody to the degree that I would get to know them within just 50 pages of understanding an assessment. And that sounds like, I'm being hyperbolic, but I'm not. Reading these things helps me understand preferred communication styles. Right now, if you're a team leader, and I started the Intermetrics, the first company where these profiles reside, where I wrote them, started that in '99. But we really got our start, founded a second company that focused on real estate about 10 years ago, actually this year. And our entire focus in the beginning was all around real estate. So we've got a lot of experience in real estate, right? I co-own a RE/MAX office up here in Pennsylvania. We know that team leaders coming in here's a great example. You're a high D, we'll go over these in a second, type A kind of decisive team leader. You're a sales professional that's grown the business to a point where now you need help and you want to outsource to other people. And whether that's an administrative assistant or a transaction coordinator or somebody to just take the buy side. You look to hire somebody like yourself. That's what we do more often than not, is our personalities create a compatibility issue. And those personalities that are closer to mine, I have more resonance with. I get along better. I just, I can, excuse my French, but I can shoot the shit. I can hang out. I can wear flip-flops. I can be myself, and then very different, starkly different personalities. There tends to be trouble communicating. One wants to be incredibly detail oriented. The other's like, no, let's not go below 20,000 feet. Just big picture. And that creates tension. When you go to hire somebody, if you don't have any metrics in place, you just hire the person that you probably resonate with the most. You can look at the resume and, weigh those variables, but it tends to have an inappropriate amount of weight, right? Or gravity on your decision. And then all you ended up doing was hiring a transaction coordinator that's just like you. They hate details. They said they did in the interview, but their personality would have shown they're not great with details. They're like you. They want to be big picture. Let's go get it done. Fluid, dynamic, play off the cuff, that kind of stuff. So that's one of the big areas where having a behavioral assessment like DISC helps understand from a team leader standpoint, any hiring or any manager standpoint, who is it I'm hiring? Who is it I'm managing? What motivates them? How do I use that?
So let's see, some of the questions that Bree had, I would like, what are those? I know there's the acronyms, you have, the driver, that engineer style, the amicable, I think it was. What are those different DISC, basically personality types or something that we have when we're doing that DISC setting?
So D is for decisiveness. I like to think about it more about problem solving. So a very high D, high and low is not good or bad. Doesn't denote bad when you say low. Actually, the original model was more of a horizontal, so you wouldn't get angry that it was left or right. But in today's political world, that would probably get us in trouble too. So high D's, right? Very decisive. D for decisive. You give me a problem, I make a decision, or even a question, right? Where are you going to go to lunch? McCarthy's. Okay. If you ask the high D why they thought that decision, why they made that decision, they usually didn't. It's just instinct. They just make a decision. Pick one. I'm good. And if it, Heather, you said it earlier, if it breaks, we'll fix it. We'll go with it. Right?
Right.
Low D's, very deliberate. Right? They don't want to make those decisions quickly. Where do you want to go to lunch? Well, what variables do we have to consider? How many people are going? Are there any dietary, restrictions? Blah, blah. They just start thinking. It depends on where you are as to whether that's good or bad. I don't want a super high D working at the nuclear power plant down the street. Like, what's that button? What's that alarm? I don't know. Just hit one of the buttons to turn it off. No, you want a very slow, deliberate pharmacist, right? Just give them something. But it depends on where you are. Sales tends to be high D because you have to, it's very, no sales call is ever really perfectly structured. It's just kind of free form. You're feeling it out. I, the interactive, is extrovert, introvert. It's the same stuff everybody's always heard. Higher I, more interactive, that's more extroverted. Lower I, more introverted, right? Not extroverted, more introverted, quiet. High I's like to tell you everything they think. You never have to ask a high I what they think. They already told you. Low I's, it's not that they don't like you. It's not that they're not buying into this presentation you're putting on. They're reserved and they're quiet. They don't tend to share their thoughts unless they're around old friends. They can be very different and chatty. S is stability. This is pace, right? How much stability do you like? A very high S likes a lot of stability. They like routine. They like systems. They like processes. They like repeatability. A very low S is the opposite. They're all antithetical. A low S doesn't like a lot of structure. They like freedom. Chaos is not a bad word for them. If you've ever heard of a VUCA environment, right? Volatile, uncertain, chaotic, and ambiguous. They thrive in that stuff. It's exciting to them. I don't know what the plan is. Let's go do it. And tomorrow's going to be a totally different day. So again, it depends on where you are as to where that might be a good thing to be or not, right? When you bring the context in. And then C, it's conscientiousness. It's details. Very high C's, lots of detail. Facts. Minute quantum levels of detail, right? If you got to 100. And then the bottom end of the scale, super low C's. They hate detail. Think of C's like altitude. A very high C likes a lot of detail, meaning they like to be at 0 feet. Hell, they like to go below, all the detail I can get. A very low C is low detail. They want a high altitude. They want 10,000 feet minimum. Don't get into the minutia, their favorite word, which high C's think is a stupid word. There's no such thing as minutia. So those are the four. I like to think of them as problems, people, pace, and procedures. D is problems. How quickly or not do you deal with them? Pace or people deal, outbound or extroverted, introverted. S is pace, super slow, super fast. And then details, right? Procedures. So those are the four. When we talk about DISC Plus, we're actually talking about two different assessments. So a lot of the people on this call is probably familiar with DISC. It's extremely popular in real estate, which makes sense. Why? Tends to be high turnover. You tend to have remote work where people aren't in the office with you all day, so it's harder and longer to get to know them better. And it's a complex job, especially if on the sales side, right? Are you dealing with a seller? Are you dealing with a buyer? There's a lot of different personalities that come into play. You're not making one sale to one person. It's a couple in many cases, plus the other couple on the other side of the fence, plus, so it's a very complex sale, believe it or not.
No, for sure. For sure. And how would an agent, knowing they would probably want to do their DISC profile to know where they fall in line, and then how does that help them understand when they are meeting with a client to be able to kind of read their personality and maybe help? It's like you almost want to be able to talk to somebody and the way that they're comfortable, I guess, hearing things to be able to convert or get that rapport faster in that way.
Absolutely.
Does that make any sense?
No, it makes perfect sense. Since we're talking about sales roles as part of the roles that we're talking about is one of them, it's tough. All other roles, two people working together should try to meet in the middle. So that super low C that says, I hate detail, let's just wing it. And the super high C, they got to meet in the middle. If they're on the same team, they have to understand you're going to want a lot more. I'm going to want a lot less. Let's compromise. Except the salesperson. Sorry, salespeople. And I've been one my entire professional life. Sucks for you. Sucks for me. But salespeople shouldn't do that. Salespeople shouldn't say, I want the buyer or seller or prospect to come to my personality. Why? When you're operating in your own personality, that 98% of the decisions that you make on a daily basis, you're more comfortable. You're more relaxed. You're more true to yourself. And what we do know from a lot of good empirical science is the more comfortable you are, the more capable you are of making a buying decision. And it doesn't matter which personality. The higher the discomfort level, the lower the conversion rate. It just creates this, conflict in your head. So having them to have to keep up with you because you want to go real fast and not dog details and say, just we'll worry about it later. You just put that buyer, that prospect, into an uncomfortable situation where they're either now forced to ask you and demand it, or they want it and they're not getting it. So salespeople have one of the hardest roles. Managers even don't expect good ones. You adapt to my preferences. No, you as a manager, especially if you follow like servant leadership from Greenleaf or somebody like that, is you have to almost travel more to the employees. But at least there you're having some distance in between. So as a salesperson, you got to figure out, all right, what do I think the personality of this buyer is? And there's trainings that we can even schedule and more documents and materials we can support to it. But once you start to understand the DISC model, you can start to pick it up in people, right? How many questions do they have? One of the best models that I've seen for this is start with high detail, right? High level, 10,000 feet, and put this question into your process. I'm trying to think of an example. I would just end up saying, what's the process we're going to go through here? I've never bought a house before, Mr. J. Well, there's a lot of details to it. Basically, I'm going to guide you through everything. Is there anything specific you would like to know? So I started with high level, but there's the question you want to put into your process is, would you like more details about? You're giving them the opportunity to tell you what their personality is. So if they are a high D with a low C, they're probably like, no, when we get to it, we'll ask.
And is that the same? I know you were just talking about with like supporting staff, being a management to be able to communicate with your staff. And I'm sure it's the same way when you're, a broker trying to do recruiting, supporting staff and stuff like that. How does the DISC, if a broker were to do the DISC to be able to try to find supporting staff, is that something where they may need to know where all the other support staff that they're going to be dealing with day to day need to fall and who's going to be able to complement that? Or do they try to find the same? I've always tried to go almost opposite of, I have somebody that's really good at this. I try to always find somebody who's almost opposite, because then they'll balance each other's out. Like, this person's really good at this person's really good at this. And that way it may be a little opposite, but as long as they're still nice people, I feel they can come together and meet in the middle, but everybody has their strengths and weaknesses and trying to fill in the gaps that way. That's what I always try to.
It's a very, Baker, Mark, feel free to jump in anytime, as I said before we started, but a diverse team is fantastic. And I'm talking about, talent diversity, right? If I hire as a team leader or a broker everybody that's like me, then all the things I suck at are going to be tasked to people who probably have the same strengths and weaknesses as me, meaning they suck at it too. Mm-hmm. Right. So do I want to be doing Transaction coordination? Hell no. I'm a super high DI with a very low S, and the C so low I don't know what the score is because I don't really care. Spoken like a low C. It's a detail. Whatever. It's really low. That's sufficient for me. If I have to go over and do all the transactions, make sure that all the I's are dotted and T's are crossed, we're probably going to go to court because I'm going to show up at closing someday and something's going to be missing, and then they're going to be angry, So having diversity on the team is 360 mentality, right? They're covering my 6. I'm looking here, they're looking there. But we don't want to just go out and hire somebody just because they're different. We want to find, based on the jobs that you need, we do a team assessment inside the dashboard that you guys can have when you license the assessments. The team assessment plots everybody onto one big map. It's a big square, 4 corners, 4 dimensions, D, I, S, and C. And so it pulls them into the different corners, and they all move around based on where their specific scores are, all 4 of them combined. And it helps me understand, okay, for these roles, I'm probably looking for somebody in this lower left quadrant, right? More C, more S. Listing agents tend to be much more high DIs with really abysmal S and C scores. I'm just talking generalities here. There's outliers for everything. Showing agents tend to be that lower right corner where it's a lot of S and I. I mean, if I need to show the Joneses their 23rd house, the super high DI is probably going to get frustrated and want to pull like an HGTV moment. Like there's 3 houses, pick one. I don't have time for 18 more. But an SC is somebody that's very nurturing and attentive to detail, and they like to go slow and be methodical, and they're great with walking them through more houses. Transaction coordinators, all C. I think accountant, right? So understanding these things really helps me decide who do I need on the team and who's going to be ideally suited to handle those things based on their natural talents, based on the way their brain is wired. I can override that. We talk about breathing. Breathing is my favorite example. It's ran by my subconscious nervous system, my autonomic nervous system, technically. And based on different markers in my body and my brain decide I breathe at this rate. What's the CO2 cycles? I can control that. I go to a yoga class and I can make myself 4-box breathe. I can make myself control my breathing, whatever. But the moment, Mark or Baker walk in the room and start talking, I get into a conversation and I forget. I don't pass out from lack of oxygen.
Right.
It reverts back to my subconscious brain. That's how you want to hire. You want to hire people who don't have to think about breathing. What type of breathing they do just comes naturally to them. So taking me and putting me in a job that is like an accountant, I'd be thinking all day long. It's not what I do, not from a knowledge skill standpoint, not from a degree standpoint. Naturally, I suck at massive amounts of detail. That whole page would just blur to me.
Hurts my brain.
It would hurt my brain. Can I do it? Absolutely. It would take me 3 times as long and have 5 times as many mistakes, but I can do it. So I can, like I said in childhood, I can be anything I want to be. Yeah, but what should you be doing? Right? Find what if you're a hammer, be happy being a hammer. Don't be jealous of the screwdriver or the wrench.
No, I like that breathing. That analogy is really good because it's like I can control how I breathe, but in day-to-day real, when I'm sleeping, it just happens like naturally. So trying to find out who somebody is just as their natural self without having to force them to do something they're not going to be good at. They're going to have to force. They'll take longer to do it because I don't want to do accounting. That's why I pay someone to do that. Like that stuff just hurts my brain, but I'm more creative. I'm going like even now trying to do my taxes. I'm like, oh, but I could be doing this. I could be doing this. And I keep finding things. And I'm like, well, I really need to do it at least to get the stuff together for the accountant. But I keep putting it off and doing tasks that are 2 weeks in advance just because that's way more fun to do.
That's the attracting factor, right? Or attraction factor. So you have 2 doors or more, but usually there's 2 doors. And everybody on the call that's listening, if you lead people, have you ever had somebody you were trying to train or you yourself done this? And you just described it, the siren's call of, the attractiveness of, I'll go to door number 2 because I like that stuff. I'm comfortable with it. Left to your own druthers, and you're supposed to go through door number 1 and get the paperwork done. if there's nobody kind of riding you, even yourself, it's oftentimes more tempting to go through door number 2 and take that choice and go, well, yeah, I'm 2 weeks ahead. I don't need to do this, but I sure as hell would rather do this than that. And we've all had people we've managed, especially in a sales capacity, where you say, hey, I need you to go do these things. And it's a week before they get it done. You're like, did you get that done yet? Like, I got distracted with this. And that's the deadliest piece, because they feel like they're being productive. They're like, well, all this other stuff had to get done too. I'm like, yeah, but that's 2 weeks out. I needed this by Thursday. And so not only do people not do well when they have to think outside of their natural behavioral style, but they tend to try to avoid it. And it's even subconscious. They would swear that they didn't consciously decide to not do that work. It's happening, underneath.
And that's how it is. It's not until I go to bed and I'm like, I did all this stuff today. And then I go to bed and I'm like, but I was supposed to do this. But I get up, 4 o'clock in the morning and I'm right back to doing the fun stuff again. And
this is how, as a broker or a team leader or anybody hiring, managing anyone, this is how understanding these types of things about a human is a huge help. Because why? Why can't I just read their resume? Anybody? I mean, I wrote it down in the resume.
Well,
I've never read a resume once that said, I'm going to suck at this job. Please hire me.
Yeah. Implying that people might have stretched the truth on the resume, right?
I've definitely had that. I've had to learn to look at, portfolios versus I'm really good at this, because I have learned that the hard way. And now I feel so many people are possibly even using AI to help write their resume. So that's going to be that puts our resumes to a completely other level nowadays with all this artificial intelligence to be able to help us write, like, here's my resume, rewrite it. Because I think I did that for my husband. Just like, no, let's take it in there. It's going to flip it up and make you look like $1 million.
I had a guy who said one of the assessments we use has 2 parts. And the results came out wacky as hell. I just didn't buy it. I was like, what's going on here? And eventually he admitted that he took the first half, but he was late for a flight. So his wife took the second half for him. So whatever comes in, I don't trust much of anything. Even before AI, resumes to me were like a brochure from Ford or Chevy. Of course, they're going to tell you that their truck is fantastic. Okay? They're not going to say. So it's great for like specific details of when you worked and job titles and things like that. But then the interview itself, you're on best behavior. So you can try to trick people. You can try to catch people. You can ask questions. There is so much free education out there. If anyone's ever gone to Indeed, the largest job board in the world, they have more education. It's great. I'm not saying that they're telling people to lie, but if you're a broker or a team leader and you're trying to recruit agents or hiring support staff, right, that you need something that's a little more objective than just, well, I asked them and they told me they love this kind of stuff. They told me they were great at it. And their job history, wait, they moved around a lot. Is that because they're a younger person below the age of 30 and for whom 30-year careers don't exist anymore? That's the trend now, has been for about 10 or 12 years, is 2 years, then somewhere else, 2-3 years, then somewhere else, 18 months. So is it because they're a horrible employee, or because they're following the national trend for younger crowds of people that tend to move every, many years? My age, I'm 55. The average person, I think, would have 3 jobs in a full-time career for like 60 and above. Get out of school and go to work for a company and retire.
I didn't know that, because before I went off on my own, I pretty much I was between 2 and 4 years. And really it's because I had gone as high as I could go and I was just bored. So I would
look at that resume. How do you interpret that? Do I go, job hopper, that's not good? Well, if you use that rule, you're probably not going to get an accurate read, because especially on a younger crowd, it could be somebody that was just following the trend, right? They get a little bit of something from one company and move on to the next and then on to the next. It's not that they're disloyal. Right? Companies today don't have much loyalty either. So all I'm all saying is, how do I get a more objective view on something as part of it, right? Never more than a 25 or 33% of my decision making. But that's where assessments really help in growing. It helps in understanding conflict resolution as well. Not the reasons behind the conflict per se, but understanding how two humans want to communicate and collaborate makes a huge difference. And in my experience, one of the more common causes for interpersonal combat is a real big distance in one of the dimensions we talked about a little bit earlier. There's a rule, my rule, so I don't know if it's really a rule, but Jay's rule, where we interpret others' behaviors through our own emotional filter. This is on the topic of conflict, misunderstanding. So I'm a super low C and I see a super high C and Mark sitting in front of me in a presentation. And no, Mark's not a super high C, but pretend to be one. Mark, you slept at a Holiday Inn last night. And he starts asking a million questions. And I'm like, dude, what are you doing? I answer the first 3 or 4. And then I'm thinking, you're just getting pedantic at this point. This is annoying. I mean, like, come on. Are you trying to poke holes in me? Are you trying to submarine, torpedo this damn thing? What's happening here? Or I'm a high I looking at a low I, and the low I just never speaks. And I think they hate me. But the problem is if I interpret their behaviors through the emotions I would have to behave that way, I'm usually going to be wrong. And that's where it comes from. I see behavior. I assume what I have to have in emotions to make me behave that way. And the farther apart they get, the worse it is. So the super low D thinks the super high C is very pushy and aggressive and wants to have everybody look at him and control everything. May not be the case. Might be, but doesn't have to be. And they all tend to look at each other and say, so they interpret the wrong emotions. And then the fighting starts. The misunderstanding leads to miscommunication and fighting. So having good assessments helps me understand, why the hell do you ask 25 questions? Oh, I see, because you want to make sure it's perfect. Well, I appreciate that. You're trying to support the initiative. Okay, it's not because you want to annoy me.
I've definitely taught enough classes where it just becomes like a one-person show, just constantly asking questions. It's like, okay, enough. With somebody else. And I think that's also been where it's harder because I do so many classes via Zoom and there's no photo. So I loved in-person classes because I can read people.
Yep.
I can see, when I get the deer in the headlight look, and I know I can reel it back. Or if they're bored, I can go faster and get into more advanced stuff. And I have such a hard time with Zoom, especially if somebody's not on camera, because one, it's like I'm just talking to myself, but 2, I can't read where they're at in my presentation. Like, am I going too fast? Did I completely lose them? Do I need to reel it back? Do I need to keep going? I definitely find that hard. And I do enough of these by myself. And yes, I don't really have a gauge, but I know that they're always recorded and they can slow me down or they can Mickey Mouse speed me after the fact. But I'm a fast talker, so I go through fast. I don't want to be slow. I just do my thing. But that is interesting that you say that, because anytime I've taught a class, I do like the in-person only because I can read, what's going on with people. And I never really looked at it as the different personalities. And now maybe when I do get that person that asks me a lot of questions and know that they're not just trying to annoy me, but that's just who they are.
And that's a cool thing about this specific. There's a lot of different psychometric instruments, right? This is a behavioral assessment. So these are the observable behaviors, the actions, the body language, the facial expressions, the words that come out of my mouth, the things that are observable. You're absolutely right. I mean, even with camera on, I'm limited, right? My ass is tied to this chair. If you and I were in an office, there'd be body language, there'd be intonation, and tone can even change when you're physically present with somebody. So the more for the remote offices that are out there, and that's becoming a much more common thing, right? It's first the bistro offices, and now full-on remote brokerages. So anything I can get that helps me understand before I bring somebody on, do they have talents that align well with the work that I need them to do so they can live in that 98%, right? Without having to think about it too much. Is it all perfect? Hell no. Nobody's had 100% perfect job. We're all going to have to adapt and try to be better at certain things and get out of our comfort zone from time to time, right? But if I can have the majority of their work line up well with how they just have to, they don't have to think about thinking, in other words. And then once I get them into the team, in managing them, how do I help with communicating? How do I help with motivating them? We haven't talked about the motivational aspect of the DISC Plus. It's a totally separate assessment based on the work of guys like, Cleaver, Geyer, Spronger, Rokeach. They all study motivation. And so there's an assessment in there that's combined that looks at what gets you out of bed in the morning. Me understanding these things helps keep you engaged as an employee. Sorry, go ahead.
And what is it like? So Sandy's asking, how much is it like she's broker team leader looking to, for recruiting as well as office and team? Is that something like a broker team leader can purchase? How do they even get started with trying to set up for the DISC assessment?
Oh, Baker, Mark, you guys want to cover that? It's $1 million, but we've got a really significant discount for Heather and Bree. It's like
some people start dropping off.
Yeah, it's like 99.8% discount or something.
Yeah, I'll take it. So something that separates DISC Plus profiles, to most other DISC distributors is we're revolutionizing the way that the assessments can be purchased, right? So the old model is very transactional. You pay per report, you pay per, applicant that's coming in, and it gets expensive. So Jay, Mark, and myself decided, well, what's the point of limiting this, the assessments, and is it a budget thing? Is it, we don't want that, this level employee to take it? No, we said everybody should take it. So that's why we created this SaaS model, right? It's just like Netflix, Spotify. You pay a monthly fee and you get unlimited assessments. So if you use 5 1 month or 5,000 the next month, price doesn't change. And we also have an option too where you can turn it on for a month, and it's fully active. You get a dashboard. You get all your profiles are archived. You get team reports like Jay had mentioned, and you get ongoing support from myself and Mark and Jay. So that's kind of the beauty of our model. Again, is if you want to do a 12-month contract and have unlimited for all 12 months because you're hiring nonstop, beautiful. We're here. We can put you through training, certification. Mark can have your account set up in 30 seconds. If you guys want to test it for a month, we can do that as well. If you guys only want to use it for 3 out of the 12 months, no problem. Your profiles stay safe. They stay archived. Nothing gets deleted. So that's kind of the kind of our model. We did decide that we wanted everybody here who's interested to take an assessment for yourself, free of cost.
Okay.
So I don't know if there's like a way that we can.
It's in chat.
Okay, there we go. So that link will send you to a free disc, and we hope you enjoy it. The report itself is very easy to read and understand for the most part. If you have questions, like I said, I'm here, and Jay and Mark, they're here as well. We're going to answer everything you guys have, and we'll debrief it with you. We'll set a one-on-one on Zoom if you would like. Phone call, email, text, doesn't matter. We'll help answer anything. So feel free to take that. It takes about 12 to 15 minutes. Try to finish it in one setting, and just be truthful, right? We're trying to find the self-awareness and authenticity. That's our main goal, the 2 objectives. So we hope you enjoy it, and we're excited to get some feedback from you guys. If you enjoyed the disc, things that we can always add, we're always adding things. And the last thing I will add too is we're launching something in about 2 weeks. And I'll briefly go over this, but it's called DISC University. And we're going to be one of the first DISC distributors, DISC companies out there that is creating a site just for educational purposes. We're not selling anything. You will have an infinite amount of blogs, videos of me, Jay. We're doing some podcasts, so you guys can tune into those. And it's a site where you guys can go and get all the information and answer any how to use the DISC for hiring, how to use the DISC for communication. It's unlimited information will be on there. So we will be sharing with you guys the launch date again, and we're excited. So we'll get any feedback we can take.
Okay. And will you be emailing the free assessment link, or is there a code or something that they use on your website?
So the link that we sent you guys will automatically send you a link to take the assessment. So it's immediate. No loops, no curves, nothing. Just click the link, takes you straight to the assessment, and the results will be immediate.
Okay. So when we get that, just so people who are watching, just let me know, and we'll put that where the video was. We'll go ahead and put that comment with that link for everyone.
Yep.
In the different groups and stuff like that.
Yep.
So Kate, if you can see that, we'll put that in wherever you're watching it, because I know we have it in a few groups and on YouTube, but we'll put those links and all of those. So just stay tuned. Once we get that, I'll go ahead and add those wherever they are.
Awesome.
Because that'll be cool. I'm anxious to do that, because again, it's been so long since I've done one, but I'm clueless. I think I know what I am. Maybe, I don't know. I'm all over the place. I think I'm like right there in the middle of all of them. I think maybe, who knows? You probably know just from talking to me. You guys are good. I think that's the part, once you understand where you're at, understand the whole disc. I mean, I just know I have agents that rely on this heavily as they're meeting people, so that they can really try to match different personalities. So Sylvia, no, I haven't posted the link yet. Once I get that, I'm going to be putting that where you're watching the video in those comments. So stay tuned or send me a message. So I do think it's important to understand where we're at, so that we can make sure to, whether you're bringing on a team member, I don't like them to be exactly like me, but knowing where all that is. But any last words of wisdom or anything like that?
I will add one last thing really fast. I think one of the questions Bree, and I won't dive too deep, but Bree had sent something about, how do we gear an assessment to a certain job role? Like, how do I know that this is a general disc that you guys will be taking, but we've expanded from there. We've decided, well, why don't we create benchmarks? Jay's done a great job in his surveys and studies. We have almost 300 benchmarks now. And we're always acquiring more. But if you want a disc that will say, hey, this outbound sales, or this agent, right? This is what I'm looking for, not just a generalized disc, but I want to know, will they perform well in this certain category? And these are, again, based off of Jay's studies, very reliable. And you guys can test that as well. But think of any job role description, we'll most likely have it. It's just an easy way too. If you're hiring, right, if you have a high volume of hiring, bringing people in, reading these assessments can take a lot of time, a lot of money, especially if it's not, Jay coined the term, take the guessing out of hiring, right? You want to know what's happening before they come in. And we show you that. We say, this is a, fantastic fit, or this is an average fit for that job role. So again, if you guys want to look at benchmarking and look at, some roles that you're hiring now, we will have that benchmark and we can test, and, we can show you guys what it's like.
Okay. So that's basically, if I was hiring a transaction coordinator that I want to have, and you'll be able to say, based on their desk, is that a good fit?
Yep. Could be an excellent fit. And if it's not, and it's a tool as well to, again, if you're hiring just crazy volumes of applicants coming in, it kind of helps you decide, okay, who should I reach out to first, right? Who do I want to, here's my main focus on. If 5 out of 10 are excellent and the other 5 are below average or poor, let's go excellent for now. Again, this is a third of the decision making, but yeah.
And we've studied thousands of individuals in the roles with performance metrics to get those benchmarks. So when we say it's an excellent fit, it's like having a personality coach on your shoulder that says, overall, I'd put them in an excellent fit category, because they're similar to what we see other buying specialists, buyer's agents, whatever the role is. We've studied all of them, 300 of them. So outside of real estate as well. Perfect. And even if you're on your own, there's only one question that we didn't get answered that was originally posted before. And it's, what if you don't have anybody, if you're just all by yourself? Having this understanding helps you understand what to lean on and what not to, right? You shouldn't do everything by yourself. You'll need to outsource something somewhere. So understanding your own strengths and weaknesses helps you understand, where do I set my success as reliance? My success will depend on me primarily doing A, B, and C, because these are things that naturally come to me. I'm good at them. I like it. I get charged when I'm doing them. My battery isn't drained when I'm doing them. But understanding those things, that's the biggest problem with being a solopreneur. Who does it? You. You do everything. That's fine in the early days, but at some point, to scale, you've got to figure out what to jettison, right? Day one, love it. You're going to do everything yourself. At some point, when is someone else going to take over some of this? Even if it's a virtual assistant, even if it's part-time, even if it's outsourcing your taxes. To grow, you'll have to figure out what things come off that are not absolutely your greatest strengths and put them in the hands of somebody for whom that is a strength. And they get done a lot faster, a lot more accurate, and actually it costs you a lot less in the end.
No, I always say that's why, I do a ton of videos helping people build their websites that they get, but I do it too. But it's like, if you want to learn it, here's everything you need. But if it's not something you want to learn how to do, it's not something you're good at, you have to delegate before you throw your computer out, the window and all that fun stuff.
Which is where Teams even came from, right? The concept in general is right. I have things that I'm not great at that I'm getting more volume in because I'm successful. I have a brand now and more people are coming in. I need somebody who's able to do these things. Great attitude would be find someone that loves to do what you loathe to do.
Absolutely. No, absolutely.
Someone out there, absolute nirvana when the books equal 0 and everything's balanced. That's like a high for them. And that's awesome. Thank God.
But I know that's not me, because that just hurts my brain.
And there's people who would love to sit in an office and make sure everything is running and they're creative and thinking big picture and innovative new stuff. They don't want to go out and hustle and negotiate. They don't want the hassle. They don't like feeling like they've got to push back and say, no, if we don't list this for $2.3 million, I'm not going to take it. They don't want to be in that. Somebody does.
I realized very quickly that wasn't me. I much rather be behind the scenes making someone else look like the rock star.
There's all kinds, right? And that's why you talked in the very beginning about having that diverse team really makes a business go. You can't do everything. You shouldn't do everything, even if you could.
Absolutely. Well, this has been absolutely fantastic. We really appreciate you. I know Bree's really bummed she couldn't be here, but she's learning on her own, doing some fun, exciting things. For everyone watching, we will make sure I will have, wherever you're watching this, we'll have the links for that free assessment. Go check that out, as well as their website, and check them out. Get that assessment done. And thank you guys so much for joining us today. It was great.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Yes.
Anything else you need, you let us know.
Okay, for sure. Thank you guys. Bye, everyone.
Thanks.
Bye.